Okay, regarding your hypothesis, the summary of your hypothesis, a couple things I want to emphasize following up on the last video. I need you to argue a couple of things. Remember in that video I said that it has to be a hypothesis that would be interesting to policymakers, okay, that some sort of relationship between X and Y that would either make for good policy or make for a good policy argument. And this is you know, falls under this concept of who cares, okay? Now that sounds weird, because you would think that all researchers do research where people actually care about it. And the answer is to that assumption is absolutely not. Many researchers do research where no one actually cares. You know, frankly, I have to be frank with you. I'm an editor of a journal. I'm an editor of a book company, and there's a lot of people out there who do research that, to me, is just, you know, why are you wasting your time in this area? So I want your stuff to be to pass that who cares factor. Okay, make it interesting. Make it an interesting hypothesis, something that you think holds water. Now, or can keep a reader interested. Now, one way that I need you to explore in supporting this sort of who cares factor is to make sure there is either existing literature directly related to this hypothesis, okay, or there's a gap. There's a gap in the literature. Okay. Now, right now, I want you to just, you know, do some basic exploration. You know, we'll get into literature reviews and so forth when we get ready to write the literature review section. But I want you just to do some basic exploration. You know, I mean, you can just go through Google if you like. You don't have to cite anything in your hypothesis summary. That's not what the summary is for. The summary is for you to think about, use your brain to think about what interests economists and policymakers. But it's going to behoove you to in supporting your, whether your topic is interesting or not, it's going to behoove you to go in and check for these two things. So, is there a lot of existing literature out there? Do you see a lot of chatter online? Now, I'm not talking about chatter in blogs or anything like that. I'm talking about chatter in meaningful publications, you know, and that could be magazines, you know, whatever. Is there a lot of chatter about that topic? If there is, then it's probably an interesting topic. There may be a lot of chatter around that topic, but an obvious gap in what you see online that you think needs to be filled, and that would also make it an interesting topic. So it's going to behoove you when you actually visit, when you actually start thinking about your research hypothesis, what it's going to be, to just go out there and do a little bit of cursory exploration. And I say it's going to benefit you because eventually you are going to have to do a literature review on this area, and you're going to need to find some literature either in that exact hypothesis area or be able to prove that there's a gap in the literature that needs to be filled. The other thing you need to be aware of as you're thinking about this hypothesis, is it doable? Okay. And doability mostly lies in the availability of the data. And so in our case, it's not necessarily the case that we're going to have to worry about the doability of it, because a lot of times what happens, you come up with an interesting hypothesis, but it's not doable because you can't find the data on it, okay? But I do want you to think about in your hypothesis summary, I want you to at least give me a couple of sentences reinforcing the fact that yes, this is not only an interesting topic, and here's why, but it's also doable. It's doable because we actually have data in this area. And you know, that's not necessarily a lot of times what we actually talk about when we perform research, because we can't do the research without the data, so by definition it's doable. But it is something that I want you to be thinking about and write a couple sentences on, just so you know when you leave this class and move into the future, you'll and if you have to do economic research, you'll be thinking about the doability of the topic as much, if not more, than whether anybody cares about the topic or not. So it's more of a learning tool, is the reason why I want you to think about how doable this project is. Again, a couple of sentences in your summary just outlining the fact that this research this research hypothesis is reasonable on two levels. One, it is interesting because of X, Y, and Z. But two, we also have data available in this area, and it's a substantial amount of data, etc. We'll talk about the data in a little bit.